So, thought I'd do a bit of an update on the Banggod 6-inch frame, just to sort of show you how I've built mine. And the other day when I was testing out the True RC and Lumineer antennas, this was the quad I was flying. And I was flying it on 5-inch props, even though it's a 6-inch, as you can see. And the reason for that is simply I didn't have a huge amount of 6-inch props, and because I was testing, I didn't want to chew up the ones that I had. So what I'll do is I'll take this guy apart and I'll explain why I've built mine in the way I have. But before we do, I just want to touch on the potential Achilles heel of this frame, which is something I didn't do in my original review, and the reason for that is it's just a pig to weigh, because you've got to sort of, the motors are basically part of the frame, etc. And in my haste to get mine built, and in my excitement, I didn't weigh it. Right, so let's get a weight on this guy. As you can see, I've taken the props off. So fully built with 2 battery straps, it comes in at a rather hefty 484 grams, which is pretty much 120, 130 grams heavier than you would expect a relatively light to medium size, medium weight 5-inch quad. And of course this is a 6-inch, and in this case I've got very big 2408 motors on it, which I'll come on to in a little bit, so it's a little bit of an unfair comparison. But weight is the biggest issue with this quad, and it really depends how you want to use it. Clearly this has got the DJI system in it and a little bit of 3D printing at the back. It hasn't, however, got any antennas on at the moment, so you're going to have to put another 10 grams or so, 15 grams with antenna weight. So weight's going to be the biggest issue with this quad, and where you stand on that really depends on 2 things. The reason why I liked this frame is A, it would fit the DJI system in it really comfortably, which was the number 1 issue. 2, it reminded me of the Smooth Operator, which was a frame I very much loved. And 3, it had a ton of battery space, which was something that I was really looking for. Now, the DJI system takes 1080p HD footage, but the recording quality, even with the air unit, isn't particularly great, and I think it's a rung below the best of the sort of rung cam splits or things like that. However, my idea with this guy was, and the thing that attracted me to it, was to run it with a really big battery and just use it for sort of medium range, hence the big motors. If you wanted a more acrobatic, lightweight quad, clearly this guy isn't for you. The weight itself gives you 2 things. 1, it gives you immense stability in the air, and it means that you're not going to get buffeted around if you're flying longer range and it's pretty windy. The downside, of course, of it is it's creating a lot of additional drag, and that weight is eating into your battery life quicker than it would do if you're running a much lighter quad. So whether you are happy with that or not, it's really a personal decision that you're going to have to make yourself. If you compare it to a 5-inch quad running the DJI system, and as I said, these motors are 2408s and they weigh pretty much 40 grams a piece. If you put it onto, if you look at a more standard setup running the DJI, this one comes in at 383 with the antennas, and this guy is running the same motors but in the smaller 2207 size. And this is me just messing around with a standard 5-inch quad to see if I can run the DJI unit mid-mount, and I'm waiting for a 3D print that someone's making for me, Mark, to finish this guy off. But this is the Superfly juice mode, and I'm missing a couple of bolts on the top plate, but as I said, I've got antennas, so this is, you know, pretty much more than 100 grams lighter. If you're running this guy and you're adding on a Hero 7 and, you know, the 20 odd gram GoPro mount, and you're running, you know, a 1500 milliamp hour battery or even larger, you're going to be looking at, you know, 700 to 800 grams of quad very, very quickly. So this is not a quad for those people who like lighter weight or even normal weight setups. The other thing I want to touch on just before I start is an issue that I had with this quad. When I was flying, I had a head-on collision with a tree, as you do. And basically the angle mount split here. This is the mount that essentially gives you your, in this case, Hero 7 angle. And you can see it's basically split right across where the standoff of the GoPro mount goes. Now, I contacted Neil about this, and he said that the first ones were laid up incorrectly when they were printing them. So just be aware that if you've got one of these early editions, chances are this may be a weak point. Having said that, you know, it's a couple of quid bit of plastic or 3D print, so it's hardly the end of the world. The bigger issue that I found, and I haven't got it to hand, is that the Hero 7 mount, or Hero 6 or Hero 7 mount, which I loved so much and said was a definite purchase, the one that I had was pretty much unusable in the field. And the reason for that is it was so damn tight that with cold hands I couldn't get the camera back out again, and I literally had to force a hex driver down the side of the Hero 7 to prise it out of the mount so I could use it on another quad when it broke on this guy. And Neil said he's sold, you know, over 1,000 of these Hero mounts and never had this issue. So I don't know whether mine's a one-off or there was a very small faulty batch, or whether it was just really cold that day and I had cold hands and I was struggling because I had been out flying in the, you know, cold temperatures for a few hours. I don't know, but all I would suggest on that is it remains a great mount, but warm it up first and give it a bit of stretching before you go out flying, and make sure you can get the damn GoPro out, because I found it hugely irritating when I was flying. So that's the moans out of the way. Let's look at the actual build. So as you can see, as I said, I'm running 2408 1900 kV motors. And the reason I chose these motors are, A, I wanted to try some larger stator motors. I tend to sort of like 2306 or 2307, and I thought this being a 6-inch quad, it would be a sort of nice size frame just to sort of get a feel for these larger stator motors that everybody's using. However, these are a relatively high kV at 1900 for a 6-inch quad. You would probably expect sort of 1600, 1700 to be more of a reasonable kV. And the reason why I chose these guys was A, because I like the 2207s that I've got very, very much, but B, I thought, given I'm unlikely to really fly long range around here because it's so flat and boring, 1900 kV would potentially give me a more flexible quad, one that had tons of power and tons of punch, but hopefully with big, low profile, efficient 6-inch props would still give me pretty much a decent flight time. The other thing that I've done is I've added these hex cone washers on to the top plate, and the reason why I've done that is simply just to protect my battery. So if you're in a crash, I don't really want the hard edges of these bolts ripping into my battery should it get flung or the battery stack break or anything like that. And that's something I did on the smooth operator as well. Longer term, if I have some more, I'll also put them on these bolts here, and probably again on the back ones. And the reason for that is it just stops the heads of the bolts getting rounded off and damaged in crashes, and just gives you a bit of protection. As you can see, I've got a buzzer in mine, a self-powered buzzer, and as per my smooth operator, I've just mounted it at the front because there's a lot of free space in this nose section, and that was the best place to put it. And basically all I've done is used a bit of 3M foam tape to hold it in place, and then I've just glued around it. And the glue I tend to use is this welder stuff, which I actually got following all the issues I had with the Mobula 7 breaking every 2 minutes. This was something that another channel recommended, Nick Burns I think it was, and it's good stuff this. So yeah, that just holds my, in this case, Vi-Fly buzzer, and obviously if my battery gets disconnected, this guy will sound and I'll be absolutely fine. Right, so there's the quad with the top plate removed, and as you can see, the DJI unit is sat in the back with this 3D printed mount, and I printed this off Thingiverse. I'll leave the links. This is actually one designed for the 5-inch, and there are other parts to it. There's a camera protective plate, but on this particular one it sat the camera too far back. It probably works better on the 5-inch that it was designed for. And it also has antenna mounts which actually screw onto the back of the motors, so your antennas sort of sit like so. Don't know what that effect that's going to have on your range, but it's a pretty nifty solution. But as I said, I only printed off this particular part, and essentially the DJI unit just sits on it. You've got a little space beneath for your wires, and there's also a little spacer which just flatly sits across the top, which mine's missing at the moment, and all it does is just really sort of sit like that and press it into place when you put the top mount on. But the thing I really liked about this mount is when you're using the MMCX connectors on the DJI unit, this mount enables you to basically put them on like so, and then when the mount is pressed in place, it stops the antennas from popping out, which is also always my biggest fear on the DJI unit when you're using these MMCX connectors. So I really like the mount a lot. In terms of components, this is a flight control I've never used before, and one that I would never even have looked at had I not been looking for a flight controller with a built-in regulator powerful enough to run the DJI unit. And having played around with these for some time, I just recommend using a separate regulator board, 12 volt or 10 volt or whatever you can get hold of, just one of the little micro ones, and save yourself the hassle. But this is the HG LRC F7, and it has two regulators, a 5 volt regulator and I think it's an 8 volt regulator, 2 amp. And this board on this side is really straightforward, but on the other side it is connector city. So not only do we have multiple connectors for various things like GPS, etc., but there's also 4 LED connectors. And I was going to cut mine off because I hate boards with connectors on, but because this frame was so spacious, I had the space, so I just left it on. The ESC beneath it is actually, we've come full circle. It's the very old Hobbywing GS that I used in my very first smooth operator build, the 5-inch one, and it's still going strong now. So although it probably appears so, I don't have an endless supply of components, so I've just basically reused it in this quad. And the rest of it is really straightforward. I've got a 50 volt capacitor which I've just zip tied to this standoff here and stuck a little bit of glue on the bottom of it just to stop any shorts. And my Crossfire receiver The quirk about this frame is, if you're using this particular mount, is you've got your DJI, you've got your stack, but where do you put anything else? Where do you put your receiver? I hate mounting receivers on top of my stacks, especially the Crossfire, which puts out an absolute boatload of noise, and you want to keep it as far away from your components as possible. Now, usually I would stick it in the back or at the front, but there just isn't the space to do it on this. So mine is actually in the middle of this bulkhead here, the 3D printed bulkhead, and I've basically just slid it into that space and added a bit of tape to keep it in there, and that's not going anywhere. And unless I'm really unlucky, that'll be nice and safe in there as well. So yeah, not a huge amount left to say. I think the frame itself is exactly what I expected it to be. It's super rigid, you know, once it's got its once it's all connected together and the top plate's on, it's super stiff, and you can feel that in the air. Now obviously I was flying mine with Betaflight, and if you followed my channel for a bit, you know that I've fallen in love with KISS, and I hate Betaflight 4.1, and I've hated Betaflight since 4, to be honest with you. I can get Betaflight 3.57 flying really well within a couple of packs. Betaflight 4 and upwards for me have just been full of potential issues. This one is running some CLI settings that Superfly, who designed the Juice Mode, sent to me. And while it flew better than it did on stock, it still flew a long way short of what I would expect from one of my KISS setups, even running pretty standard PIDs. And this guy's running all the RPN filters and all that jazz as well. So yeah, so in terms of the frame, I really like it. I like the way it builds up. Missed opportunity in terms of, you know, realistically, where do you put your receiver? I suppose I could have just put a little plate over the top of this and mounted it, but again, as I said, I hate sticking the Crossfire receiver anywhere close to components because it's just asking for noise. Really like the frame, but it is really heavy, and I noticed that the motors themselves put out so much power that the weight of this frame is largely irrelevant to them. It felt hyper agile and hyper smooth and hyper sensitive running these motors, simply because they have so much torque and power that, you know, the weight is largely irrelevant. Where I did notice it is in flight time, where I was losing, maybe, you know, tottering around and doing a bit of freestyle on my sort of 5-inch KISS quads. I can usually get sort of 4 minutes 30, 5 minutes even, while I'm just sort of mooching around in flips and rolls and flying between trees. This guy, it was more like 3:30. It was really eating my batteries. Now of course that was on 5-inch props, and I shouldn't be running 5-inch props on huge motors like this, but it's not going to be a particularly efficient setup, I wouldn't have thought. Be interesting to see how it does with some 6-inch, but as I said, the weather has been so awful around here that I'm just not getting any flight time whatsoever. This guy is going to stay on Betaflight despite my misgivings of it, because I think KISS works exceptionally well on 5-inch, but on 6-inch you have to do a lot more work with it, and I think on 6 and 7-inch Betaflight starts to come into its own. Speaking of KISS, Alexander, what's his name? I can't remember his surname. I'll put a link below. Has fixed KISS, so it now can use the MSP protocol, which the DJI needs to show voltage and timer when you're flying. So you now no longer have to use a Dorner Betaflight board to pick up those. And moving forward, he says he's going to add on as many of the other features as he can. He's an exceptionally clever guy. So basically all you need to do is download his fork of the KISS firmware and download the Chrome KISS GUI, and there's an option in there where you can choose MSP on RX1 or RX3 and TX3 on the KISS board, and it works exactly the same as the Betaflight setup. When you arm, it starts recording, you've got battery voltage, you've got timer, As I said, the only thing you can't do is change PIDs yet, but such is the genius of Alexander. I dare say that will be coming before long. So yeah, that's it from me. Shout out to Catalyst Machine Works for obviously sending me this frame. As I said, really like the frame, but just be aware it's a bit of a chunky monkey. But for me, it kind of suits what I was looking for, and I suspect I'll be running mine without a GoPro, or certainly without the Hero, and I'll probably just run mine with a Session if I do. So that's it, guys. I'll do a quick video on how to set up the KISS MSP. I'll probably do a quick video on the Superfly Juice mode that I just showed you, and I've also got the GEP Mark IV HD version because I liked the GEP Mark IV a lot as a normal freestyle frame, so I thought I'd get the HD version as well. So that's it from me. Hope the weather is better where you are than it is around here, because it's super frustrating. It's just pissing down every day. And happy flying. Cheers, guys. Thank you. Bye bye.